Mr. Modi is now in Nice in France, and this is the first step of his journey. It's a convoluted one. He's in Nice in France, then he goes to Slovakia, then he's back in France at Evian, where the G7 will be, and then he goes to Paris and gets back to India. But Nice is important for really primarily his bilateral with President Macron of France. Now, Modi and Macron are old friends. India and France are strategic partners. France is remembered for being the Western country that supported India after India went nuclear in 1998. And there are really three major pillars of this friendship. The first is defense. We know about the 36 Rafales. We also know another 114 are going to be bought. We know that France's Safran and India will work together on a new engine. We also know that as far as civil nuclear is concerned, both sides are working together. We know that in the space sector, there's a lot going on. Plus, now solar energy is an issue, and a variety of other things will come up when Macron and Modi meet, including the situation in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, all of that, because the Americans, particularly President Trump, has not been very nice to the Europeans. In fact, President Trump has referred to his European NATO allies as cowards. This is something quite naturally has not gone down very well with the Europeans, with the British, French, Germans, Italians, and so on. So that apart, Russia, Ukraine will certainly come up. So quite a lot is on the agenda. So beyond that, it's hard to say, except that from there, Prime Minister will go to Slovakia, where there is an opportunity to build strong defense and economic ties before coming back to Evian for the G7 meeting.
Right. Shanjoy, very interesting, details you have shared with our viewers, and we are getting live visuals right now of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has reached Nice in France, and French city of Nice also got ready to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Of course, he will be going to Slovakia first, and then he will be coming back to France to attend the G7 summit. And before we talk to you about, the G7 summit, and of course the confirmation that has now come from the White House about the meeting of President Trump with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, I want to quickly talk to you about this first leg of Prime Minister's visit to France, in Nice specifically, what all engagements are lined up over the next 24 hours.
Well, there is the launch of the Bharat Innovates. That is something that will be there. That President Macron will also be there. It will be in Nice at one of these public areas where there will be this huge function about Bharat Innovates. So that's going to be shortish, perhaps about an hour or so, after which comes the most important meeting, the bilateral meeting with President Macron. That meeting is going to take at least an hour, followed by a lunch, which will also be an hour and a half or 2 hours, after which he goes to Slovakia, to Bratislava. But the point is, those two are the big ones, the bilateral with Macron, and then the lunch, the working lunch, when they will continue to discuss other things. As I mentioned, defense is key, the 114 Rafale fighters, also other stuff regarding the Safran engine. The French may bring up the issue of 3 Scorpion submarines, but India has already said that we look into it, which means that it's not going to happen for a while. So all these things are on the agenda, and nuclear issues, civil nuclear issues, and also space issues, Russia, Ukraine, the Gulf, particularly the Strait of Hormuz, terrorism, all of these issues are likely to come up when Prime Minister and President Macron meet.
Also, Shrunjoy, the focus is also going to be on Prime Minister's meeting with US President Donald Trump, especially after the developments that have taken place in the Strait of Hormuz. 3 Indian sailors have been killed, and the kind of response that we've got from US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. After that, the focus is also going to be on this meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump, the US President.
Yes, that's going to be happening after he comes back from Bratislava. So that's at Evian. And Times Now had already talked about it, early this morning, when Times Now said that this meeting was likely because there are 2 people at the same place at the same time for over 2 days. There's no way that they're not going to meet. So that meeting is also going to be crucial, primarily because there are all these problems, little problems, big problems, whichever way you want to see them. And they have to be ironed out because initially there was always talk that, well, Prime Minister Modi has been invited to America, but President Trump has a visit to India pending, and that's the Quad Summit. Now, that's going to be later this year, sometime later in the year is the plan. But naturally, if there are these problems that are happening in the Gulf and 3 Indian sailors are dying as a result of it, we'll have to see when that Quad Summit is. But this is an opportunity when 2 leaders, and they have said this publicly, that they like each other, when they come face to face, and I'm referring to President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, then all these problems which have hurt the bilateral relationship can be ironed out to the extent possible. If President Trump, who wields extraordinary power in America at this point,
right.
If he says, look, we have decided to sort everything out and this will be done by tomorrow.
Right.
Believe me, it can get done like that. But we don't know President Trump because let's look at the situation with Iran. He's often said different things at different times.
Right.
So it becomes strained, this relationship that was the big one for the 21st century between India and the United States.
Well, absolutely. But the focus of this visit of the Prime Minister is also going to be on strengthening relations with France. Now, that is something that we're also going to be focusing on, viewers. Remember, India and France have shared close ties since 1947. That was formalized through a landmark strategic partnership that was launched in January 1998. That was the first ever for India with a Western nation and first for France with a non-Western nation. So the focus is going to be on the key meeting between, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Emmanuel Macron. And we'll see what really comes out. Shrunjoy, for now, thank you for joining us with your inputs. We're heading into a very, very short break. Coming back with lots more. Stay with us.